For automation to be successful in that kind of setting, it really needs to come from the top down. There has to be, from the top, the drive to say, look, we need to make certain processes easier and more efficient. How many companies actually have successfully implemented AI and it actually contributes to the bottom line? And I think the results are mind-boggling because the number is like 0.02%.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have two great guests that are going to have just some excellent information to share with the audience. Anybody in manufacturing is really going to benefit from this conversation. And we are going to answer the question or the conundrum that we commonly run into when we talk about automation and manufacturing. And that is, that robotics only has an application where you have high volume, low mix production. So Matt and Francois are going to share with us why that's not always the case. And I think that's an exciting point for a lot of smaller shops that have been kind of kicking around the idea of automation. So Francois, there's a couple different organizations going on here. There's Macrovey, there's MEL-USA, and there's a BESCO. They all kind of have a relationship in the automation space and run different aspects of it. Francois is the president of MEL-USA. Matt Labinski is the business development manager for Macrovey. So welcome to Manufacturing Insiders, guys. I know that was a mouthful of an intro.
It gets confusing for us too, yeah.
Okay, so I did okay with it.
Yeah.
Good. So, so tell us why traditionally robotics in manufacturing has been only applied in those low mix, high volume applications, and how you're looking to kind of flip that model.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept because, in my personal opinion, there is quite a bit of misunderstanding what the word automation stands for. Okay. Right. Traditionally, if we kind of look what's going on in AI and we talk about these robots and people feeling threatened that they're going to lose their job. But if you approach automation correctly, it actually is much more related to making your employees more efficient. So it's much more related to the employees being more efficient by taking away these non-value added tasks that they perform.
Right.
Okay. So, for example, somebody's doing something at a machine and they now need to stop because they have to go to the warehouse and pick up materials to continue their job.
Right.
Okay. So here you have a high value operator on a piece of equipment that now needs to stop and perform a low value task that really doesn't add to the bottom line of the business.
Right.
So if you approach it from the point of view of it being assisted automation, not full automation, not replacement, but assisted automation, that's where you really are going to see some efficiency gains for the business owner. Because in the end, it's all about the bottom line.
Right. Yeah. And so Matt, I think we were talking about how some of these robotic solutions that you guys can put together are pretty flexible. So, while that trip to the warehouse in the example Francois gave us may not be enough to justify a robot, when you combine that with 50 other menial tasks that are time consuming and use that same robot for those applications, that could replace someone and be significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we do when we go in to speak with these customers is kind of hear what their current process is. So, what's going well, what's optimized, and, what could you automate? And having that mix, like Francois said, of not just having all robots, but also having some human aspect, but also kind of building it in a modular sense. If someone's not ready to kind of just completely go into automation, we're able to build small, more modular type of robotic cells, and then we can grow and adapt as the business grows and adapts as well. So that's, I think, where that flexibility really comes into hand, is being able to scale with the business versus just having to go all in at once.
Right, right. So, Francois, can you give me a good example of a contract manufacturer that you guys were able to go in and analyze their business process and kind of find some unexpected or really cool applications for robotics?
Well, there are several instances, but and maybe this is not the perfect example because we were actually recently involved in a fully automated warehouse, except for one aspect in that warehouse. Okay, so here we have a warehouse that, or actually a distribution center that was 99% automated, but there was one particular area where they literally had to hand pick product to complete orders. So this is kind of where we in, and we started very small, about 800 square feet, where we automated that process. They can test it, they can run it, and then it slowly, simply like Matt says, scales out because everything that we do is modular. So if one small process works, then we can simply duplicate that process in a business.
Sure. Okay. So help me make it a little bit more tangible for the guy who hasn't had any automation. What exactly does modular mean to him, and how would this what would the steps in the process be? I'm picturing a machine shop in my mind where a lot of these smaller machine shops, the 10 to 20 to 30 person shops, they might be running 10 different jobs, 15 different jobs in a day. Is there an application for him?
Yes. Okay. So one of the things is that for automation to be successful in that kind of setting, it really needs to come from the top down. There has to be from the top the drive to say, look, we need to make certain processes easier and more efficient. And then whatever that process is, like I mentioned, yes, if you have a machine shop and we have about 10 jobs running at the same time, how do we get materials from the warehouse or from the dock to those machines so that these guys can keep working and don't have to take breaks to now get materials to do their next job?
Right.
Okay, so that would be an example of an area to look at. Okay, we're not replacing anybody, but a simple robot that can go from the dock or from the warehouse and pick up materials and bring it to the machine, that might be a huge either time saver or cost saver and making the guys more efficient.
Yep.
Okay, and same at the other end. Once it's done off the machine, if they can just put it on a pallet and that pallet moves to either the shipping area or wherever it needs to go, again, little steps in automating the processes.
I see. So if you're looking at that example of, bringing the materials from the dock to the, whatever the loading station is, what, let's say that would add up to 10 hours of work per week.
Yes.
does that justify, what sort of investment am I going to make to solve that problem? And is it justified? Do I get an ROI on that?
Great question. Okay. Of course, depending on kind of what we're moving, okay, the thing that because we operate under this notion that we're robotic vendor agnostic, meaning we're not tied into one specific type of robot, we try to always find a solution with the minimum amount of risk.
Right.
Okay? So let's talk, for example, about a forklift. Now, yes, you can go out and probably buy a older used forklift for about $5,000 or $6,000. Okay. However, if you go out and buy a new forklift, which needs a driver, needs an operator, we're probably in the range anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000, depending on what this thing needs to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for that same amount of money, we can get a forklift in there that can operate autonomously, but even if the autonomous part of the forklift is not working for the business, they still end up with a fully functional forklift that now, instead of having a driver sit on it, has a little remote control that can control the forklift. So there's
Okay.
very little risk in trying to move towards automation if you pick the right, in this case, robots. Very little risk, because in the end, even if the automation doesn't work out the way that you want it, you still have a piece of equipment that you would need anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting concept.
You
Matt,
know,
I think you might have had something to add to that too.
Yeah, just from an ROI perspective as well, like, okay, you'll have a upfront cost for a robot. Depending on which you get, could be expensive, could be relatively cheaper than you would imagine. But the thing is, you buy that robot, you have that upfront cost. You might have some maintenance, maybe some software that you're paying for. But if you're doing, like Francois stated, unloading a vehicle and loading materials into your warehouse and back and forth, that would be labor that you're paying monthly indefinitely versus a one-time upfront cost for a robot. So when you're thinking of ROI in that perspective as well, that's where you get your return, even if you're paying a little bit more upfront.
Right. So is that kind of material transfer, is that one of the first things that you look at in a manufacturing facility, or are there other places that you might start?
okay, so I just used that as an example, but the area where that's very often overlooked is the last step of manufacturing and the first step of actually like moving goods and transportation. Okay.
Yep.
So the other area that we're very focused on is kind of that last step in manufacturing. That could be either packaging, it could be either kitting, okay, it could be actually light assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole other area where there's a huge potential for automation, because a lot of that stuff is done manually and can be done much more efficient if we automate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Simple, such as putting items in a box. Okay. If you're manufacturing something and you need 12 items in a box, well, that whole process can be automated, including making the box, packaging it up, labeling it, and get it ready for shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if it needs to be palletized, it can be put on a pallet, or however that process is, there is lots of room for improvement there by automating the last couple of steps in the manufacturing process. Okay, so this is where, yes, you're manufacturing, you're putting pills in a bottle, but then the bottles will need to go into a box, and then the box needs to be closed and be put on a pallet.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
and all these things, and we're not talking about like latest and greatest. I mean, these are all processes that are very traditional. They're very well vetted out. They work. It's just that people need to start thinking about this automation concept.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, there is a lot of resistance to automation, especially in smaller companies.
Yep.
Okay?
And is the biggest source of that kind of that sort of unfounded fear that it's going to replace workers? Is that kind of what the driver of that feeling is?
Yeah,
Yeah, go.
we get that sometimes, and it's definitely something that I understand how that could be kind of scary. You know, if you're running a company, you don't want to be the bad guy that you know see all the time in the news. It's
Right.
but what we really try and do is kind of show that we're not replacing these employees. We're just kind of shifting them to a different role. So instead of, like Francois said, you know, packing a box full of parts, you might move to actually programming the robot to understand, okay, these are the parts we need to put into the system. Or maybe it's maintenance. If, you know, a robotic arm is down, how can that employee now go and kind of fix it and repair it? And what we also do is internal training. So we can build courses of how to use the robotics we're, you know, selling to customers. We can even do courses on, hey, if you want to be a robot technician down the road, here are courses you can take in order to do that. So we're really trying to kind of,
Oh wow.
yeah, be careful about stepping away from the replacing humans with robots and kind of just show that this is a booming market still. We haven't really seen the peak of robotics yet. So how can we help people to kind of fill those future roles down the line?
Right. Yeah, and I feel like it's, you know, a lot of the companies I talk to, it's becoming less of a concern, you know, that idea of replacing employees. More it's taking on the form of, we can't fill these roles anyways, so we need to find a robot to do the job or find another way to do the job.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, you know, I've had conversations with quite a few automation companies, and I've gotten the same story. And that's what I've already stated, that the use case for robotics is when you're producing a lot of parts, and those parts are pretty much all the same size, same shape, whatever it might be. So what is different about your approach? Why are you able to kind of get around that main issue that so many companies seem to be having?
Because we don't represent one. We're not tied to any robot. If somebody comes, I mean, to us and said, look, this is what we want to do, or this is the process, then yeah, we look on what we have. But if we don't have the right fit, then we'll just go and find the right fit for them.
I see.
And that's why, like I said, and it's traditionally, and this is not so much in the small companies, but this is more in the medium to larger companies. Traditionally, the drive for automation comes from, and I don't know the right wording, but from somebody that is on the mechanical side, and their role is to kind of see what is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That works, but the problem is if it doesn't come from the top,
Yep.
if the C-suite or the owners are not the drivers, it's very hard to get the concepts inside a business from the bottom to the top.
Right.
Because as soon as the bottom says, look, we want to evaluate this, the middle layer is like, oh, wait a minute. Here comes IT.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, you're going to bring in another server? And then it's like the electrical guys, oh my God, you need more electricity. So everything, every step is a struggle because it's not being driven by from the top down.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and the IT guy doesn't necessarily have the authority or the clout to enforce and to make sure that people are adopting the technology.
Correct. And this is what Matt was referring to before, is that it's there is this fear and there is this C-suite attitude that, yes, you know what, we might have a hard time filling these jobs, but nobody really wants to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when the ideas flow from the bottom to the top, the problem is that the middle layer and the top layer, they don't want to change because they're all so used to everything.
Right.
So it is only the true younger generation of either business owners or very forward-looking business owners that actually will make it happen. And it does happen. And there are people out there that are doing it.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I talk to some of them. It's a question I ask, of any of the manufacturers that I work with or have podcasts with. I ask, how are you integrating AI? How are you integrating automation into your business? And some of them are very much on the side of like, I'm really trying to figure this out. Like, we haven't found the right thing yet, but we're trying to figure it out. So that's why I'm excited to have this conversation with you, because I'd love to make some introductions as time goes by. And I already have a couple people in mind that I think would benefit from a conversation with you. Because I really like your flexible approach. And I think it's important. So Matt, from the business development side, obviously you have your target market of those people that are actively pursuing automation and technology. Those are low-hanging fruit, the easy ones. Have you had any strategies that have been successful at influencing the C-suite guys that maybe haven't thought enough about it and are not taking it seriously enough?
I think for C-suite, it definitely comes down to the financials. And that's why putting together just a return on investment calculation, I think, is kind of what speaks to them the most, to say like, hey, this is what you're going to get in returon for automating your processes. I think that speaks a lot to the C-suite specifically. But a great thing too is that we custom design systems, but we have some concepts that we kind of use as demonstrations of what we can do. And we actually built those, have them in a technology center at our warehouse in Atlanta, and we can run demos live. So if someone can't really picture how this is going to work in their head, if they're on the fence, we can have them out to move their product actually through the system. We can even film a demo, if they can't make it out. But I think actually like visualizing how this would look inside of your warehouse is a great way to kind of pitch it versus just like, hey, robots are cool, you should use these in your warehouse. So I think it really helps if, the decision maker can actually see the system in action, see their product, especially moving through it. That's a great selling tool that we have.
Absolutely. AI is something that I think about a lot. And as time goes by, I'm thinking about it even more. Like I just started reading this book that actually Henry Kissinger, along with some others, wrote right before his death, which actually wasn't that long ago. But he was really anticipating the impact of AI on our future. And you have kind of the apocalyptic doomsday scenario where AI takes on a life of its own, and it it's going to make, we already outsource all of our decisions to it, so it takes on whatever role it decides. But then you have the other one where it's just a huge assistance and facilitation to the world and makes everybody's lives better. Do you guys think about that? Because I mean, when you're programming robots, I guess how much autonomy does the AI structure behind it have to, flexibility?
Okay, excellent question. Okay, so we have what is called a control system. Okay. So Matt alluded that we have several demo units set up that we control through this control layer. Now, of course, let's talk about processing an order that either needs to be kitted or bagged in one of the demo units.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we have several different machine learning applications inside the control layer. Okay?
Yep.
Now, this is not AI, this is traditional machine learning. It's been around since, I don't know, 50, 60 years, and it's just pure math. Now, we run that machine learning on incoming orders and products and stuff like that so that we know, or at least get a guidance of how we need to process stuff, like where we need to store product in which bin, or which bin needs to be closer to the table, and all that kind of stuff. We do not trust even the machine learning. We're only using it as a guide to make sure that we're on the right track with our logic. Okay? Now, there is one area where we actually allow the AI to do its own thing and we don't interfere. And this is where we actually need to place products in a tray based on the volumetric dimensions of that product so that we can get the most amount of product inside a big tray. Okay? So that is the only area where we allow AI to actually do its thing and send it, say, okay, robot, go ahead and put it there. The overall trend, now remember that we're doing this in a control system. This is our software, piece of software, okay? And all we do is send missions to the robot and say, okay, go to this bin, pick up this bin and bring it here and drop it off here. Now, the overall trend in the industry is what's happening is that instead of having AI and machine learning in these control systems or in the controllers of the robots, they are actually moving the models and the AI directly onto the robot. Okay, so as an example, right now, when we send a command to a 6-axis arm to pick something up, okay, all we're doing is saying, okay, go ahead, move here, pick it up, and let me know if you picked it up. Okay? And if you didn't, then I send another command saying, okay, go ahead, try to pick it up again. But what is happening now with the AI, it's being pushed to the robot where we say, hey, you need to pick up an item, and it will figure out by itself, hey, I didn't pick it up, I need to do it again. So the decision process of the actual action is being pushed to the robot. So the AI, and that's why, for example, you see all the news about NVIDIA, about their chips now handling all these big models, is because they can actually start pushing that stuff to the robot.
So those are really interesting points, kind of differentiating between what, traditional machine learning and more the modern machine learning that we think of when we're, interacting with ChatGPT or these other large language models. And it kind of gets me thinking about the future of robotics. Do you picture a world in which, you've got this, I guess, robotic assistant in your factory, and you can just give it verbal instructions and say, I want you to pick up the pallet. It can identify a pallet, move it to, the warehouse, which it's already got that programmed into its interface. Is that sort of kind of what you guys see as a future?
I mean, it will definitely get there. Okay? Because the whole humanoid development that is occurring at this point, and I'm just looking at a humanoid type robot. The biggest issue is training data.
Right.
Okay. And this is one, and I don't want to get too far off subject, but this is one of the biggest issues with AI, especially the AI that we interact with, like ChatGPT and Gemini and all those, is that they basically obtained their data from the garbage that we have been putting out on the internet for the last 30 years.
Right.
Okay, so.
Which is why it's disturbing when people kind of refer to, oh, ChatGPT said this. And it's like, no, it's regurgitating Google's censored crap.
Yes, no, absolutely. And this is one of the things is that, and this is the danger of AI currently to society in general, is that most people are not challenging it. Okay, they are not. They simply put in a question, get an answer, copy and paste it, put it in a Word document, and that is how things are.
Mm-hmm.
So, but not to get off subject about the humanoids and the automation of robots in the facilities, as you mentioned. The problem is that there is still not enough data to actually allow at the robot level to build a context.
Right.
So right now everything is like commands, like we are controlling commands. For example, we can give this to a robot, but the robot would not understand that this is a cell phone.
Right.
Because it can't build a context around what it's observing.
Right.
Now, as processing gets faster, as more data becomes available, yes, eventually those decisions, just as I mentioned before, can be pushed closer to the robot. So eventually the robot will make decisions based on a simple command like go do the dishes and know what that all means.
Right.
Okay. It's like right now, a lot of, especially on the humanoid side, the robots that they're using, they're all 2-year-olds, maybe a year and a half old. Conceptually, in understanding and building context around what the action is that is required to be completed.
Right.
Okay. But yes, we are going to get there. And the robots are getting smarter. And that's kind of what I was talking about before, about where we use AI to let the robot arm, the 6-axis arm, actually figure out what the best place is to volumetrically place an item in a bin.
Right. Yeah, and if you this question is way off topic, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on it. So, that is so simplistic for a human, for us to look at a part and be like, oh, I need to grab it like this and move it, to this other location and know exactly, and for all of the details around that. And so realistically speaking, AI is, while it can synthesize a huge amount of data very quickly, when it comes to that actual decision-making process, it's miles and miles away from a human. Do you fear a scenario in the future where AI starts making decisions about the direction of humanity and decisions that now it's in control of power grids and it's in control of factories and it's in control of things, and all of a sudden it says, you know what, we don't really need humans anymore. The world would be better off without them. Like, could that happen?
We allow it to happen, then eventually those control decisions are going to be made by AI. Simply due to the fact that they can process much more information than we can. So, for example, I'll give you a prime example. I mean, this is okay. If you are, okay, I'll give you another example. I'm building this robot, okay, and the job of this robot is to go pick up toys in a room and put them in a box.
Right.
Okay? Now, remember, primary focus for me is software, but I ran into an issue. I'm actually physically building this robot. I'm looking at the motherboard, okay, and I'm trying to figure out the exact power consumption of the NVIDIA motherboard. All the documentation in the world says it's got to be 5 volts. Okay? Now, 2 days, 5 volts, nothing happening. So then you go into AI and it says, wait a minute, yeah, everybody says it's 5 volts, but it really should be 5.3 volts. So in that particular instance, what it allows you to do is that even though you might be an expert in a certain field, if you use AI correctly, you can actually become an expert in many fields really fast, because traditionally we know that to become a true expert in a field, it takes about 7 years. And as you are becoming more of an expert, your knowledge base and your vision becomes smaller and smaller because you're just so focused on that one area.
Right.
So
right.
that's where AI is a huge assistance. Okay. However, the danger is there are a couple of dangers. One is the more we are relying on AI, the more it will have an impact on society in the simple sense of energy consumption.
Right.
Okay, because people don't realize the power required to run this stuff.
Right.
Okay, so that's one. Second of all, is that people are lazy. People are, by nature, they're very lazy.
Mm-hmm.
So if AI says, oh, yeah, you know what, this is what you should do, okay, why should I think about it?
Right. Yep.
And now it's interesting because there just came a study out of MIT that it was related to how many companies actually have successfully implemented AI and it actually contributes to the bottom line. And I think the results are mind-boggling because the number is like 0.02%.
Wow.
That where it actually the whole implementation adds to the bottom line, meaning making people more efficient, getting things done faster.
Right.
Okay. So in that same study, what they did was they looked at brain activity of people just kind of doing their traditional research versus people using AI only for research. And you literally see the brain activity disappear when people start using AI.
Right. Yep.
So that's dangerous. And
I agree.
that is going to lead to a point where decisions are going to be made by AI and people are simply going to accept it because they're not challenging it.
Right. And they're going to become less capable of challenging it over time too, as their frontal lobe dissipates.
And I'll give you a perfect little, if you ever have some extra time, you should do this little exercise. You go into ChatGPT and go into Gemini or any of the two, okay? And you pretend that you are a person that has $5,000 to saved and you want to do something with it, okay? And in one of the chat windows, you pretend that you're talking to a bank person and ask them the questions. And then when you get those answers, you take that answers, put it in the other model, and then pretend that it's talking to, hey, I want to invest this money and tell me why I should do it. And then use that AI against each other to come
Yeah.
up. I mean, you'll get some really interesting answers, believe me.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
that's a really good point. Yeah. Yep.
So that's how you challenge it. You cannot, and remember when we started talking about machine learning that we have incorporated in our control system, I kept saying we don't trust it. Because if you use machine learning and AI, you'll never get a true answer. You only get a percentage. Okay? So you'll never get, yes, 100%. Yeah, maybe if I pick up that bottle, yeah, that bottle looks about 90 or 95% correct. You'll never get a true 100%. That's why, very simple, if you go to Google Maps and you put in your starting point and your end point, it will always give you multiple routes to get to your endpoint. It will never give you a straight route to your endpoint
Right.
because it cannot make that decision. It can only do probabilities.
I see. Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts on it?
Being the non-technical person, I kind of rely on Francois to make all those decisions. But yeah, from the perspective of a sales tool, it's a flashy word. It's the new cool thing to be thrown around that our systems run on AI. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, like I use it to summarize documents. That's kind of the extent that I use ChatGPT and AI. But
Yeah.
it is interesting to kind of see. Francois says this all the time. Like every day, every week, something's advancing and getting smarter and faster and stronger, and it's interesting to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I just keep I ask these questions because my own internal yeah, I guess disharmony is in that idea of it seems like it's progressing so fast. And is this a real possibility, or are we blowing this way out of proportion? And it's just going to be always a helpful tool. Um, and it goes back to the question of like, are humans unique in and of themselves? Are we special or are we not? If we're not special, then yeah, AI could probably get smarter than us and decided that it's something else. Or is there the soul, that undefined aspect of humans that makes us spiritual beings?
Or
But
are we AI?
what's that?
Or are we AI?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implications there, but I know that's not really what we're here to talk about. But I never mind getting off on little interesting rabbit
Yeah,
trails.
no, and I mean, Nate, I think you actually, if you're, I don't know if you still do, but you have written code, okay? And if you do some programming, I mean, I can tell you that yes, I am probably 20 to 30% more efficient because it actually helps me
Yeah,
writing code, but I allow it to help me, but I don't trust it. You cannot just blindly say, oh, yeah, this is what you think it is, but you just got to double check it and you got to challenge it. And to answer your question or what Matt said, we are AI. I mean, the uniqueness of humans is, I mean, our brain, the problem is most people don't use their brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we can build context. That's why there are now job titles called people that prompt, because they can build the prompts, they can build the context to actually ask the proper questions from these large language models.
Right. Yep.
So,
So jumping back to the main topic, if there's a contract manufacturer, picture injection molding, fabrication, machine shop that wants to look into, they realize that automation is the future. And, as you guys stated, which I'll let you give the statistic, but there's countries out there that are really, really doing a much better job at incorporating automation than we are. What's your biggest piece of advice for one of these companies?
okay, so yeah, so as we previously mentioned, I mean, it's China is definitely the forerunner on automation in manufacturing and pretty much all their processes. Okay. Europe, surprisingly, is roughly at about 23, 24% now. And the US is only at about 8%. Okay.
And what was China?
97.
97 to 8%.
Yes. Yes. Big, big, big.
And that number means the percentage of their manufacturing processes that are automated. Is that?
Yes. Yes. And factories that are automated.
Wow.
Now, I can give you a sample. I mean, the US, I mean, we're dealing with a customer, and I mentioned this before, that has a big distribution center that is 98% automated. And they move so many goods through this facility, it's mind-boggling. Okay? And they have 16 people on a shift that manages this whole distribution center. And we're literally talking, I think, close to 100 tractor trailers per shift that are loaded and unloaded.
Hmm.
Okay? Now, yes, hugely expensive. Probably around $260 million to build this facility and put it all together.
Yep.
Okay? But people are slowly moving in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
They are moving in that direction. Now,
Yep.
to answer your question, first thing is, really, for a lot of these small shops, especially the more mature ones that have been around for a while, first step is, do we have any automation or digitalization in the processes? I mean, are we using any type of software to manage stuff? Are we still writing stuff down on pieces of paper? I mean, these are all very tiny steps that can create huge improvements in processes. And yeah, they might not be considered automation, but that's really kind of the first steps that you look at to get to the point where you say, okay, now I will actually start looking at automating some processes in the sense of maybe get an autonomous forklift, or maybe get a little robot that moves the bins around, or maybe we get a 6-axis arm to do some packing, and just kind of slowly start in certain areas to do the automation.
Right.
because I can honestly tell you that's how the big guys are doing it. The big guys, I mean, cannot mention any names, but some of the big guys, they're like, yeah, you know what? We're taking one lane, one conveyor lane, and that's where we're going to start seeing if we can build in automation.
Yep. Yep.
Because A, the cost, B, everybody has to be convinced of the ability to manage the risk, okay? Because that's a big thing that everybody is worried about. Because yes, I'm going down this path, but what if it doesn't work out and I have to spend $100,000 on the robot and it's not working?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what we particular do at Macrovey is that we actually have a 4-step plan that everybody is involved in and needs to sign off before things actually go to the next step. And about halfway during that plan, that's when the purchasing decision is made.
I see. Okay.
Just to kind of move that risk, just to get everybody comfortable.
Right. Make sure you're going to get a return on your investment. Make sure there's enough processes that can be automated that would justify it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But I
Okay.
think another misconception too that a lot of companies have is like this is going to be extremely expensive. And like 5-10 years ago, yeah, but there are so many robot manufacturers nowadays that I think that the competition's really driving down prices to a
Yep.
price that people might be a little bit more comfortable with, but it's not that huge number that they're thinking of. And
Right.
especially when you look at ROI on top of that,
Right.
I think once you kind of start looking into the actual numbers, you see, okay, this isn't this crazy expense that we're gonna go bankrupt if it doesn't work.
Right. So, do you guys feel the need to get eyes on a physical presence in the operation to be able to look at, the process and look at where there may be opportunities for robotics? Is that how it works?
It's definitely helpful. I mean, we've done a lot of proposals and projects without even going into a facility, just kind of hearing what their current process is, maybe even drawings.
Yeah.
But it does help to go in, and you end up like working on these systems for so long. You can kind of see things that they might not see in the terms of their process and what could be automated. So yeah, getting eyes on it, I think, is definitely beneficial.
And so, what's your reach, as a company there? Do you have reps kind of throughout the country that can make those visits, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, we have most of our companies based in Atlanta. We have a small team, including myself, in Chicago. But yeah, we kind of travel anywhere we're needed. Always happy to do site visits again because it helps us too, kind of to go through the process a lot faster than having to ask a million questions, ask for drawings or blueprints, whatever. So yeah, we're more than happy to go anywhere we're needed.
Okay, yeah, that's cool to know. Chicago, so we're going to be up there in a couple weeks here. We're going to be going up to Fab Tech. You guys go there?
No, and actually, I'm familiar with. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah. No, that'd be cool.
FAB Tech.
Fab Tech. Yep. Yep. Yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
think
what it is.
yeah, I think it's the largest, one related to metalwork, machining, fabrication, that kind of stuff.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, that could be a good one. But yeah, we'll be up there. We're trying to get into the trade show game a little bit. We haven't really done too much historically, but thought it'd be good to kind of promote some of the things that we're doing, including manufacturing insiders and meet some people. So, but
Nice.
but yeah, this is really really fascinating stuff. We'll be sure to drop your info in the bio, and if anybody's interested in chatting with you guys some more about you possibly putting together a solution for them, I think that'd be really helpful. And I really like your approach. Like I said, being approachable to smaller companies, being more flexible with your solutions, I think is a great value add. And I think as manufacturing leaders, we've talked about the fact that it needs to really be a top-down effort, and the CEO, the C-level people need to be driving this sort of thing. And I think a lot of people default to the idea of, well, things are going good we've got enough employees, things are fine. But when we look at the fact that China has 80% automation, we look at the fact that we have an aging workforce. This is not optional. We need to start identifying areas in our operations that can be automated and doing it, even if it isn't necessarily, even if we don't absolutely have to do it right at this moment, we do need to do it.
Even from like looking at a kind of a federal level, we're working a lot in the defense sector, and like Francois said, with China being so automated in their warehouses, they're able to manufacture tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of drones daily. And that's something that the Secretary of Defense just came out saying, that the United States is not prepared for that. That's kind of the next, tool for the warfighter. Yep. And even having just that government pressure of, hey, we need to step up our automation as well is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think drone warfare is the future of warfare. Looking at that Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's unbelievable with their implementation of drones. To me, I was Marine Corps infantry. It's terrifying. It's brutal. It's just the most. I don't know. It's a shitty way to do war, honestly. But it's the way it's going.
That's the footage, and it's haunting just hearing that noise and imagining being there and not knowing where it is, but hearing that whirl of the. Oof.
Yeah, you could be the most high-level operator, trained for the past 20 years, be able to do anything as far as, hand-to-hand combat and everything, but all of a sudden a drone drops a mortar on your head. Okay, see you later. Yeah, it's terrible. I don't like it. But yeah, we certainly need to be prepared for it and, make sure we're matching what these other countries can produce. But hey, guys, thanks a lot. Oh, go ahead, Francois.
Yeah, no, I just want to reaffirm what you said, is that the thing is that most business people know that it's coming. It's coming. I mean, we're just at the beginning of this process. And it might be 3 years, it might be 5 years, where they would actually be in a position where it would hurt their business if they, at this point, they have to start thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to pull the trigger immediately, but they do have to start thinking about it. They do need to go to these trade shows. They do need to talk to guys like yourself. They do need to get involved because it's coming.
Yep.
It's definitely coming. It might be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the business or the business model, but it will happen.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
So,
great, guys. Well, hey, thanks a lot for coming on, and the flexibility and everything that with the fire alarm and
no problem.
But no, this is great. I really enjoyed talking to you. Hang out for just a minute.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.